Are you ready?
I'm ready if everybody's ready. Okay, all right. We'll call this meeting to order. Please join me in opening exercise with the pledge followed by a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic that stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Let's just take a moment, please. Thank you. Okay, let's see. Approval of the agenda. Approval of the agenda. Any motion?
Motion for the agenda.
Ms. Shelter?
Second.
Second. Ms. Shelter, any comments or questions or changes? Okay, all those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed, no? Thank you. Okay, welcome, everybody. Glad to see some people out here today. I'm sure we'll hear from you shortly. This is the time we offer courtesy to the floor. I assume you guys will wait for your opportunities, so I'll move on. Which takes us to 1.07 CLIU budget presentation.
I will introduce the folks we have with us tonight. Most of our board members met them. I certainly welcome you to come up to the podium. Dr. Ibe is the executive director of the Carbon Intermediate Unit. Mrs. Kimberly Telepen is with her, as well as Ms. Jeannie Coy, their business director of business services. Mark Scott and Randy Perry. Mark, some of you know, the director of student services and director of transportation, Randy. You are more than all welcome. You can even sit over here if you like. The board had asked, if you recall, a couple months ago when we asked about the IU, CLIU, LCTI and LTRI-C budgets, that you would like to have them presented. And so this is the first of 3 budgets. The other 2 are actually scheduled for our board meeting. So I invite them to come on up. Stacy has it up for you, the presentation, and you also all have a paper copy, I believe, at your seat. So I will turn it over to them.
Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having us. Happy to present to you the Carbon Lehigh Intermediate Unit 23-24 general operating budget. Next slide. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, great. So just to bring some people into the know who may not be aware of the general operating budget, for those of you who are familiar with it, bear with me. This is the portion of the intermediate unit budget that requires board action by each member school district. It is the what we call the membership contribution, if you will, by statute. This particular budget we allocate toward our curriculum and instruction and educational technologies department, as well as our building and maintenance. Work the first time. There we go. So just to give you a timeline, so we have to begin this process very, very early so that we're able to ensure that each of our school districts have the data and information that they need to begin their budgeting process. So on November 10th, we meet with the Superintendent's Advisory Council. All 14 school districts get to hear this general operating budget at that time, ask questions, and then they pretty much give us an approval to move it forward onto the Carbon Lehigh Intermediate Unit Board of Directors. And November 21st, we did have that meeting with our Board of Directors, and that's a preliminary approval because at that time we don't have the exact PSERS numbers. We also don't have the exact numbers for our healthcare consortium. And we usually expect to get those numbers in December. So then we bring it back December 19th for a final approval with the Board of Directors, which occurred. And at that time, we had our final numbers, which we'll be taking you through momentarily. At that point, we need to send it off to all of our school districts, all 14 member schools. And then we need to have it back to Pennsylvania Department of Education with all of the votes by May 1st, which is why we usually ask for each of our districts to have their action on our general operating budget by mid-April. I'm going to hand the rest of this over to Jeannie Coy. I'm going to stand on the side down here.
Thanks.
Thank you, as Dr. I mentioned, for having us here. Just some highlights. Our total general operating budget, so the overall piece, is coming in at right under 3.5 million for 23-24. That is a slight increase over the prior year, but under the index. The overall increase from the prior year, a little over $123,000. And the biggest piece of that, and just like with your budgets, is the salary and the benefit increases. And the PSERS contribution change as well. The district contribution remains the same. It's been the same for 12 years at $819,040, and that's for all 14 of our districts. That's a bucket for the entire group. So no change from last year. The expenses include preliminary projections. They did include preliminary projections for medical prescription benefits. That did come in at 11% and the dental at 3%. The PSERS rate was finalized in December at 34%. The salary increase estimates we use for the teachers, it's formula driven based on the district averages. So the 3% for teachers is based on your projections for 23-24 across all of our districts. And 3.5% for the Act 93, which is formula driven as well. And that's for the Act 93 averages from current year. Our support staff in the support staff contract was $1,050 flat increase for them. This slide just kind of highlights the revenue and the expense categories of the entire budget. You can see on the right-hand side, the 123 difference, which is our increase over last year's preliminary. Curriculum and instruction services revenue is up considerably, and that is due to you folks and our other districts utilizing more of our curriculum and instruction services. And those services are fee-for-service based. So the more you use it, the more revenue coming in to offset the expenses in that budget. Also, in the expenses, you can see the 3.24 in curriculum and 4.1 in building and instruction. And again, those are driven by the benefit increases, salary increases, and the PSERS rate. This schedule is a snapshot breakdown of the contribution amounts by district. Your contribution is actually driven from a calculation from PDE. We don't create that calculation. It's based on your market value aid ratio and your weighted average daily membership. So those numbers that you turn into the state, they crank out the proration between the districts. And so you'll see a slight change year over year, depending on how that aid ratio and your weighted average daily membership shift a little bit. And Christy, I do have, history. I think I might have even already sent that to you. You can see the last 5 years. And when we receive our subsidy from the state, after they pull that from the districts, we don't even get the breakdown by each district. It's a total lump sum. So that was kind of very quick. Questions? What can we help you with?
I have a
Yes.
question
Yeah.
on slide 6 or page 6, the revenue side.
Yeah,
Could you explain what the general fund and air fund transfer
Absolutely.
pertains to? It's
yeah,
such a large number in that.
Sure.
budget.
sure. So, in our state and federal budgets, there's an approved indirect cost rate. It covers administrative costs for managing those grants, like early intervention. So those funds that we're able to collect on those grants, we can then move over here to offset expenses in the budget.
So we're allowed
to attach that indirect cost to those grants and those particular budgets. And when we do that, it will fund some of our non-revenue generating departments such as our HR department, our business office, but it also allows us to offset the cost so that we're not increasing your contribution.
And in the general operating budget, it only offsets the building and maintenance, because as Dr. Ide mentioned, that's not a revenue generating activity. They're not fee for service. Does that help?
It does. So the fund where that comes from, is there, it's sustaining revenues in there?
Yes.
Okay.
So every time, yeah, we attach those rates to those budgets, and then that you can do with that bit of money, that pot of money, then is used to fund our non-revenue generating departments, and we're allowed to offset costs. Sometimes people will ask us, well, how come you haven't raised rates above the index? How are you able to do that? How are you? It's because we're able to shift that money to make.
And that pot of money came from state and federal grants.
Correct.
That is correct.
Early intervention is a huge
That's
one.
where,
So
that's a big one.
that's a good one to use as an example.
How
You're
many-
welcome.
How many staff members are covered by this plan? This operation?
Oh, that's a great question. I have that in my folder. I can grab that.
That's okay. Well, no, we want to answer your question, but we just sometimes, yes.
It's such a small number compared to what we're looking at. But,
Well, but
if you take
remember,
This
all
is
of the
curriculum and
service-
instruction and our building. Right.
Right,
Staff and
right,
all of our. So
right.
it's.
Take all of the services that you provide that are fee for.
Especially for the services,
Pay
right,
services. That's a big number, isn't it?
Those are bigger numbers. Those are voluntary, right, so these are actually required of you. And then the fee for services are opt-ins. So yes, that's a much bigger pot of money.
Do you know what that number is, the total number of revenue and expenditures for all the programs that you do as an idea?
Our entire budget,
Yeah.
our entire budget's about, was it 120?
The current year is 125 million.
Okay, so.
And that's outlined in your budget.
For the services with $2 million. General operating.
Yeah, the general operating budget is less than 1% of our total budget.
yes, the
Yes.
pieces, so just like we talked about LCTI that has a program for the general operating, and they have CAP and academic center, the pieces together. Theirs is similar. This is the general operating budget required by law to be presented and accepted at the board, but the special program and services, transportation, which is why Dr. Scott and Brandy are here. If we use those services, which of course we do, those are separate budgets that have separate staff and separate billing to the district as a result, yeah. So that's what makes up the whole 120 million.
Yeah, and then all the grants and everything else. It's pretty complex.
And I apologize, I have the total number but I don't have the total number broken down by employees, so I can get that to Jim and Christie right away.
No, you don't.
No, it's a great question.
It's, yeah, because we have to look at all the support staff that's part of this as well.
Right. Between the two, I'm gonna say around 20 employees.
But that's guessing. We'll get it.
Yeah,
They can send it to me, I can send it out.
Yeah.
absolutely.
So 20
I apologize.
employees. Managing 125 million.
Yeah.
No, that's just for these two. Do you want a total number of our employees? Total IU
Well, maybe
employees
that's what
or?
I was thinking.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, no, we
Sure.
have
Sure, we're around 965 full-time and part-time.
960.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the general operating budget that has the curriculum and instruction. Student services, I would say, is the largest portion
It
of
is.
it. Our
It is.
And that's where their programs and services and their teachers and their classrooms and what's under Dr. Scott's supervision, and where the majority of their staff, and I suspect the majority of their funds,
Right,
and then
that's,
transportation.
that's a majority, and then keeping in mind that we have other departments like management information services, which is pretty much it supports itself with all of its own technology work.
That 125 million is right under 40 different budgets. So,
I have one more question, a budget question. Lately, there's been a lot of articles and discussion about student mental health. And a lot of it, people are talking about tying it into the COVID that we just went through. And there seems to be a demand that far exceeds the supply of psychologists and other people that can help these kids. And I was wondering how you're being impacted by that.
Well, a lot. It just like all of you. I think what the pandemic did is it unearthed, a predisposition to a problem, but I think it only exacerbated it and made it worse. Because we've seen the statistics in mental health for in depression and trauma-informed care and all of those things going up over the course of time. But in answer to your question, we spend a lot of time, legislators, we have been going to legislative meetings to discuss this with the legislative body. Because we want to be able to have the staff to help absorb some of this and work with the students. But there are too many barriers. One is, for example, the school psychologist. We don't have enough school psychologists. They're just not being produced. And when they are, they're going to places where they're going to get paid a lot more money. So some of our more rural districts, our districts are struggling to get them. And yet they still have the same requirements, not only with mental health, but also to make all of the mandates by the timelines for evaluations, for example, for special needs students. So we continue to propose to our legislators that the time might be now to look at alternate certifications, alternate ways in which we can certify different members of the staff, get them trained in maybe a certain aspect of mental health, a certain aspect of evaluating students, because the problem's not going to be solved. We keep staring at it and the same problem over and over and over again. We're still not going to be able to fulfill this and help our students. And really, the only way that's going to happen is an act of Congress. In order for them to change the laws, we can't really say, well, we're going to hire these people with these certifications have to be mandated by statute and then followed through by PDE. And until that happens, we're still dealing with small numbers of staff to handle it. Social workers is another one. I mean, instead of making the certification standards more rigorous for social workers, we need to find more ways to get people certified that can actually do some mental health counseling and not necessarily have this top level license to do so.
Right. So that's something that we can all help with in meeting with legislators like we're planning to do here.
Same conversation repeated. I always say rinse and repeat. It's like they have to hear the same conversation over and over and over. And I think these are things that are doable. These are doable things. We can fund these certifications. Other states have them. So there's a model already in place, for example, in New Jersey, where they have some of these models in place. We have the opportunity. We've met with Senator Arnold, who's now the head of the education committee, and we've had these conversations. We just had a meeting, I think, at Parkland with the legislators. So these are conversations we're going to have to keep having, because the answers are there. It's just a matter of an act of Congress or the legislative body to get us to a place where we can actually start making it happen.
It's a great conversation for us to have, right? It's a meaty one. I guess what I'd like to understand from your perspective, and this could deep dive us, so I don't want to go there, but it sounds like some of this is sort of solving for the symptoms as opposed to the root causes. I'm curious because we at the local level can actually enact things that might affect root causes, right? What kind of programs could we put into place to prevent the mental health crisis that we're facing? So I'm curious if you have a perspective on what can we change at the local level that would prevent this crisis and the need for what you're.
I always think that early intervention, when we go back to early intervention, that model is for identifying special needs students at a very early age with the hopeful opportunity of being able to turn that around before it becomes a disability for a student. I think the same can be happening for mental health. I think that, when you're able to catch some of these things early, you have a better opportunity before they become so ingrained in part of the personality and the structure of a human being and usually it's coming out of very difficult, traumatized, adverse childhood ACEs, adverse childhood experiences was what the standard is based on a scale. that is used to identify how many ACEs a student's had. Sometimes you can identify how many ACEs the student has, and I think the scale is 1 to 10. Anything more than 1 to 3 is really starting to get worrisome. And, you probably could identify now how many students in all of our school districts have more than 5 ACEs. And so, and this is, based on brain science. It's based on real science on how the body responds to repeated traumatic situations over the course of time. So I'm of the belief that if we can somehow identify the possibility of these things happening early on, we have a better shot of changing it and rerouting it. Once they get older, I think it becomes more symptomatic, but I think you still can help somebody, even when you're getting them in 6th grade, who's, obviously, showing signs of severe depression or anxiety. And anxiety right now is the big topic. We focus a lot of depression, but anxiety and depression are kissing cousins, and anxiety is definitely manifested more outwardly, and we can really see it in our students.
If I could add, the district also devoted a lot of time proactively in the same measure. I mean, essentially what Dr. I was talking about in ACEs and proactivity is trying to proactively intervene with students. You will always have students that are end up in crisis. But a lot of our work this year that you've heard with Tom Sketcher and training our staff and working on identifying anxiety and identifying causes where that can be helpful when you have an entire staff not trained to the level of a school psychologist or a social worker or a psychiatrist, but that certainly can identify and intervene with students in a proactive manner, regardless of their age, very early.
Yeah, and try to turn that ship around before it becomes something irreversible. But we are, I think, in answer to your question overall, we're seeing societally that schools are definitely becoming more trauma-informed aware, because that's just how we have to be in order to take part in the process of ensuring that students have a healthy experience throughout their lives.
The session that Dr. I talked about is one Mrs. Telpen and Christy and I went to see Senator Coleman and Senator Argyle, which Dr. I mentioned is now the Senate of Education. And so one of the opening statements that we talked about was student mental health and proactivity. And in some cases, that means dollars and people that long withstand the need, because we all know the our ESSER money is running out in September, and we continue to see needs that will cost us money and cost us needs in personnel to be able to do those interventions with students, but yet the money is ending. And so that level of understanding that they need to know that we're continuing to have kids in crisis pretty much across the board was kind of our opening statement, I would say, when we met with Senator Coleman and Senator Argyle.
Yeah, we're seeing a whole nother arm of need now, and so I think it's incumbent upon all of us to speak with our legislators about what we can do as a society to help turn that ship around.
So is there a movement underway with the legislators to look at certifications for psychologists?
Well, we keep on talking about it. It's, anything in government takes a very long time. Sometimes getting it from getting it from conversation to actuality is very, very difficult. But I've learned over my 30 years and all the time I've been an administrator that it's increased the pressure, increased the conversation, and let them know where they can be heroes, because let's face it, they're in it, that's a different line of work, right? So how can they solve the problem, or at least be part of the solution?
Is there a lobby pushing back on that certification?
Right now, there's no specific the conversation is about varied certifications, but there's always going to be. I dare I say, the American Psychological Association might take issue with someone doing some kind of psychological work or what appears to be psychological work. And you have that pushback. But years ago, the physician's assistants, the doctors didn't want a physician's assistant. Now they can't live without physician's assistants. So, we got to get over that hump, because really it's about how many kids need to be addressed, and the numbers are escalating. And, you don't have to be a psychologist to really help and make a difference in a child's life at an early age. And for those of us who have counselor backgrounds, I mean, we know this, I'm a former guidance counselor. I know you're a former guidance counselor. This is just an opportunity for all of us to use, a lot of the the backgrounds that we have help. But we're not psychologists. I don't think you need to be a psychologist for this particular issue.
I do have numbers. Curriculum 24 staff and buildings and grounds 9.
Okay.
So
Thank you so much. Anything else? If there's ever any other questions, don't hesitate, please.
So the only thing I would ask, because I did ask them to be prepared to talk about if there was any special education questions or transportation questions, which is why Dr. Scott and Mr. Perry are here. Or do you have any questions about, although it's not the approved budget, any special education? Obviously, we have questions. We have students in programs at the IU across the county. It's also a fee for service. So what we use, we pay for, as same as transportation services. So if you have any questions about either one of those budgets, those two gentlemen are here to answer those as well. And if not, you came out to see us, and we thank you.
We're happy to. We would rather answer questions and be part of the conversation. It's worth it for us. So thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Thank
Any
you so
additional
much. Have a great
questions?
evening.
Okay,
Thank
thank you.
I'll look to see you.
Okay, thanks.
Rather have.
Take care.
How you doing?
I think
Maybe it was, yeah. Okay, all right, so let's see, moving on, curriculum and learning issues. Dual enrollment grant.
I don't know, Leanne, is Leanne on?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. Leanne, do you want to take it? Or you want me to take it?
You can take it and then I'll answer any questions if they have any.
Okay, this came up super fast. We were notified, I think it was mid last week. Leanne can correct my dates, that there was a dual enrollment grant that was being offered by the state. And if we had interest by Friday, we had to put in an intent for interest. Obviously, when there's grants, we always put in for them, but I will say, you typically approve them, but this grant deadline is due before your next board meeting. So I put it on this evening in the hopes that, I hope that you will support our grant. I don't know how much we will be the recipient of. My understanding is it is designed to expand dual enrollment opportunities across the state. I believe they will target districts that have little to none in terms of dual enrollment. That is not our case, so I don't know how much money, if any, we will get from it. But I believe that we should put in for it if there's money available. My understanding is it's several $1 million total across all districts, and that they will take the information that we put in on the grant about how many programs we have, some of our other demographic information, and ultimately make a decision. But if you want us to do that, it will be retroactive because it is due to the state March 10th, Leanne.
Yes, it's due March 10th.
So, is there anything that you would like to add that I missed?
No, we're still determining exactly what we will be, some of the questions on there, we're going to have to meet and discuss as a group and put in. We're hopeful that we get something out of it. But again, as Jennifer said, we're not sure if we will get much, but we'll try.
We will try.
This is a lot of colleges or.
It's dual
I'll
enrollment.
see.
It's anywhere who else offers a dual enrollment. So we have many courses through L-Tri-C, but we do have a few other providers where we offer. So it's any dual enrollment offering.
Yeah.
You are, I assume, supportive, and it will come back retroactively on our board meeting. We'll put in for the application.
Mhm.
Okay, all
Thank
right, thank you.
Thank you.
you. Okay, let's see, 2.02, there's nothing there, none at this time. So takes us policies, 3.01, first reading.
I have one policy for you to consider tonight. It's policy 146, student services. Several changes, most of them relative to chapter 4 regulations and just some verbiage changes. The changes were presented at the Friday board report, and if I have any questions, myself and I believe Ms. Edmonds is on also with the answer.
Okay, thank you. Next item, 2.02, the second reading.
Yep, I have not received any questions or comments relative to either of these policies. They stand before you for approval in 2 weeks.
Thank you. And no policies to rescind. And additional updates, there are none, which takes us to operations. 4.01, first all transportation agreement.
This is just here as a placeholder for you. This is to get some help with transporting some specialized needs, whether it's the McKinley-Vento Act, which is the homeless students, or it's a specialized transportation. It's a subsidiary of First Student Transportation. It's in the attorney's hands right now, reviewing the contract. When it comes back, we're hoping to get something to help us out. Essentially, it's van transport. This is not for buses. This is strictly for vans and whatever version of business model they have set up. That schools are using.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Next item, let's see, other information there is none. Takes us to district finances, 5.01, the 23-24 budget presentation. Tag, you're it.
All right, good evening, everyone. This is just an update of where we are in the budget process, what we refined, new numbers that we've received. So we have an agenda where we're gonna go over our budget summary, the millage options, our fund balance, per pupil spending in the county, the mandates that we are faced and versus our millage increases, and our budget strategies and the uncertainties and what our next steps are. This is our budget summary as of right now, where you can see our different categories, our building department salaries, benefits, district-wide expenditures, our revenues, what our proposed millage increases, use of fund balance, and what our shortfall is of right now. We have decreased it from our early look in December by 600,000. And that was contributing to looking at the salaries, going step by step, looking at everyone we have, truing them all up from what happened from last budget to this year, truly, and what we forecast for next year. Salaries also were trued up for this year, so we forecast those to be the same for next year, so everything is true to fact as of right now. Our millage options, I just put out there, if you were asking for the 4.1 to the index, but the other option of 2%. And you can see the difference of what the estimated increase would give us in revenue compared to the full millage increase of the 1.2 compared to 600,000. And what it would cost an average taxpayer. The 80/70 compared to the 165/40. This next slide, the Lehigh County school millage rates. It's just showing everybody in the county and where we rank amongst everyone as far as our millage rate. We're third from the bottom compared to everyone else in Lehigh County.
What does
For
that
the
mean,
school.
Christy? Like, what is, like,
So, as you can see, like Northern Lehigh, their millage this year was 24.0684 compared to ours, which is 18.339.
But the value on those villages aren't 1-to-1, are they? Do you have that data? Because that would be good also piece for comparative. Just kind of to balance things out. Is that something that you have available?
I could find
Because
out.
that'd be interesting to see, what each district's millage is versus what ours is. As we know, what's our item up here on the page above?
4 million breaks in 1, 2. Is
Yeah.
it easiest for you to see
that what one, like, for example, what 1 mil brings in for everyone, like is that what would be helpful?
Yeah.
That's what I was
Like
saying,
what
yeah.
1 mil brings
Yeah.
in for.
What is our
everyone.
millage?
That's
So-
probably the easiest. way to
Right, we're
say it.
third lowest, but is our millage the second highest? Our 1 mil? I'm just using that as,
Yeah.
it probably isn't,
Right,
to not scare anyone,
probably
but
like a
just
Parkland,
curious.
their 1 mil is way higher.
yes.
And how
Way
much they
larger
bring in.
than what our 1 mil
Right,
is.
which is very deceiving because when you look at
Right.
this, you're like,
How
oh,
it's
Parkland has the lowest millage.
Yeah. But what they bring in for a mil is, and I
Right.
guess we can
Right,
certainly
it's
get that.
significantly higher probably.
So this is what you're essentially, your assessed value of your house is multiplied by to get your tax bill. So, but Todd is right, Mr. Hernandez is right. What 1 brings in, so like even when we talk around the table as superintendents, they're not all 4.1, which is why I say it's probably easiest to level at a mill. Because remember, some districts still do have an adjustment. Remember, we used to have an adjust tax rate. So there are still some districts that this year can go up to 4.3 and 4.5.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't want to give you that. I
It's
would
like
want to give you
5.1.
yeah, how much 1 mil
Yes.
equals for every district in the county. We can certainly get that for you.
Yeah, this is always a dangerous slide to put up to
Yeah.
people that don't understand what's behind the noise. Because they assume a lot of making a lot of erroneous assumptions. It doesn't help.
What are you guys asking for, for $100,000 house equivalent, what's the taxes that they're paying in Parkland versus Northwestern?
That's a different question than what.
Yeah.
Because I feel like that's what you were that's not what you were asking.
No, the millage, what is, what 1 mil is. And I think you can deduct then the other components. It's almost like algebra if you want. You have the mill, you have the millage, you'll see what the total is and.
That's a good comparison.
But that's,
Well, that's what when you
Housing
start
value.
thinking about when people start comparing districts, that's what they want to know, right? Right, if I'm looking at a house, it's 100 grand and 100 grand. What am I paying in taxes in Parkland versus what am I paying?
That's a good.
So to me, that as a,
I mean, good luck finding a house for 100 grand in either right now.
well, you can't. Call it 500.
It could be per every 100,000.
Right.
Right.
So which way do you want it? Just so we bring you
Yeah.
one thing and it doesn't. Do you want how much are taxes, I'm gonna call it per 100,000 of a house? Or do you want how much 1 mil across all the districts are?
yeah,
I
it's
can
like,
give you both. I just don't want you to confuse the two when we.
well, it almost
Yeah.
sounds, it's 3 legs, right? There you have the millage, you have the average assessed value, and then you have what's the value of a mill, right? And then that's gonna give you, the answer.
All right, so we can get Brian to bring it up.
Thanks. Okay. See you.
Okay, this is just what we currently have in fund balance, is $17.8 million. That is there for us to spend to make our gap and shortfall less. The next slide is a representation of the per spending in all the Lehigh County schools from 2021. As you can see, we are 3rd as far as ranking amongst all the districts, Salisbury being the highest with 23,000 that they spent in 2021. We were at 20,000, a little over 20,000, and Allentown is at 16. Right now, the estimated spending that we would do for this 23-24 school year on the student would be around 23,000.
This essentially takes your pie of how much of your budget do you devote to students divided by your number of students to figure out how much it is that you are spending per student in your district.
What do you include in here? Is this the total?
The total budget.
Total.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Our next slide, Jen and I actually got this slide from one of our workshops that we went to this year. We thought it was a good representation. So this is our 12-year change from 2010 to the 2010-11 school year to the 2021-22 school year. And what it's just showing you is the total increase in dollars through our tax increases and our our 2 mandates that we have to pay, PSERS and cyber charter schools. So over this 12-year period, we raised taxes $3.6 million we paid out our local share of PSERS of 26 million and charter schools $13.8 million. And this PSERS amount is the net PSERS amount, so it's the amount we paid into the state and the state reimburses us 50%. So that is the net of those, just those two mandates.
I just thought it was impactful when we start to talk about legislative conversation. One of the other things we brought up was mandates. And, you know, not that we don't want to do the things we're supposed to do, because we certainly do. But just these two mandates alone, and there's an 80-page book of them. Just these two mandates alone cost the district a good deal of money in comparison to how much you're able to raise taxes. So that essentially means you're taking it out of the existing budget. These are all cumulative over the same time frame. We thought it was pretty impactful, and every district looked like this. The one that they showed us looked very similar. And I said, let's do ours to see what ours looks like, you know, cumulative 12-year tax increase, cumulative PSERS, and cumulative cyber charter over the same time period. And I think it's pretty impactful of the difference.
And essentially that green bar is a shift to local from state level, right? The thing about PSERS contributions that us at the local
Correct.
level contributing significantly more towards future retirement, right, than is paid and funded at the state level. Arguably, there's no educational value to that money, right? You're not educating any students on that 26 million, because that's
Right.
paying for retirement.
And that's our share. That's not 50, that's 50%
That's
of
the
the
net.
actual.
That is the
net.
net. That's the net, yes. Yeah, we're usually, you'll see further down in my PSERS chart, like 6 million a year. So some of the strategies with using some of our fund balance to get our budget closer. As always, we have the OPEB that we use fund balance for, and that is just for using it for the retirees' healthcare coverage, which is usually estimated at approximately $50,000.
I could just say something before you go through all the strategies. So there was lots in the news lately about fund balance that you saw on the slide earlier, but remember, all of those categories have specific uses, and the things that Christie, the slide included, is going to go through are some of the things that you've designated use of that money for, in order to make sure that you've planned appropriately. And these are the same budget strategies you've seen year over year, but just reminding you, some of those categories are designated within that fund balance category for you to use appropriately, like you'll hear on the next several slides. Right.
So every year we have the Mays bond pool rate stabilization. We have two borrowings that are still out there that have variable rates. We always budget with 3%, 4% increase, interest budget increase. Right now, our rates are higher than usual. It's 2.24 on the one bond and 2.28. We're continuing to recommend to budget the 3% funding, 1.5 of the funding coming from millage and 1.5 coming from the fund balance. Just to note, our one bond, the 2007 A note, will be completely paid back for the 23-24 school year by the end of that school year. So the one variable rate borrowing will be completed as of the end of 23-24.
So if your interest rates stay the same, we will draw out of fund balance to pay the interest rates, because you're only putting 1.5 in millage and 1.5 in fund balance. So if they stay the same, 224, 228, something like that, you will take some out of fund balance to make that adjustable rate work.
Correct. In prior years, it was around 1%. But this year, interest rates being increased by Fed, we're seeing it with the Mays bond pool.
Do you know what the debt service is that's dropping off with that? In Mays bond pool?
You know, our annual.
What it was,
Yeah,
we had,
well, this is the line you were gonna pay that one. but that
yeah,
Roll in the next.
They usually levelize it, so my guess is even though it'll drop off, it's gonna pick up somewhere else. So remember, we usually levelize it. Believe me. If she can't pull it quick, we can pull the debt schedule and get that.
And we can get that later.
You
We
can
can
pull-
do that
I
later.
can get it for them, the debt schedule, I'll go out from.
So the original amount that we borrowed with that 2007 was 8.5 million.
And what is our payment this year, the annual payment that will
The
go?
annual payment for 23-24 is going to be a principal payment of $1.1 million and interest, it's estimated at like $3,900 is the annual borrowing. Right, correct.
Does that answer your question?
Thank you.
Next slide here is the schedule that shows our anticipated payroll costs for the next few years and our PSER contributions. As you all know, PSER's in December announced a decrease in our contribution rate of 34. And then reevaluated every employer rate for the years upcoming. So this is the representation of what our employer rate will be for the next few years. Our anticipated payroll, that I increased by 3.2 annually, just because of the teacher contract is right now. Our actual employer cost at those new rates, what we would have in the budget and what we would plan to use in fund balance for the coming years. So if you look down at the bottom, the 30-31 school year, we could potentially only have $18,000 left in there. We would have to keep on using fund balance. And this year we are recommending to keep it to not use fund balance just because of the decrease in the employer rate contribution.
So this has been a strategy you've used for 10+ years so that you could levelize some of those increases over time. You've put money in fund balance, some years you've put money in, and some years you've drawn money out, anticipating what the rate will be moving forward.
Heating and diesel fuel. So when we go out for heating and diesel fuel, we always have the option of picking the firm price or the fluctuating price. So we always anticipate using fund balance if we do pick the fluctuating price. So this is as of in past years, budgeting that we use we want to use $3 per gallon fund it through millage and the 50 cents for fund balance with the projection that the actual rate per gallon will be around $3. For this current school year, our current pricing is $3.16 for heating oil and $3.31 for diesel. Our KPN, which is where we do Keystone Purchasing Network. That's where we go to get our fuel oil. The bid opening is April 27th, with the award being April 28th. So we won't have those numbers until then. And always, when we get that email on the 28th, it's going to be, you need to make your decision right now. If you want to pick firm pricing, you have to lock in right now. If you don't lock in right away, the rate can change.
So right now, do you mean like 24 hours, or right now you mean like
Like
2 hours
by the-
after getting?
By the end of the school
Okay.
day. Yeah.
They
Yeah,
usually give you
it's-
till 3 o'clock that day.
Yeah.
Because essentially what they do is they go buy it.
They go
So
buy
it's
it.
priced at that market at that day.
Okay.
We have historically called the board president and said, this is what we recommend. We already have the gallons identified, but if you don't identify and market that day, they essentially say, okay, I'm going to buy these for you. If you say yes, they're gonna go buy it at that price. If not, the price fluctuates until the time you lock it in.
Got it, okay.
If you pick fluctuating, the decision's not as critical because it's based on the market. But if you want the fixed price that's offered on the bid, you usually have to lock in by 3 p.m. that day. That's historically been how the bid has worked. They don't align. We will make a recommendation.
Heads up. The next slide is our transportation per lead page. As you can see, we have younger buses. Vans, not so much. They're a little older. We did just get to replace 2 of our vans. Luckily, we found someone who had vans on the lot and were able to procure them. So that was a plus because did we have to, Art, use?
Yeah,
See-
that being said, we
see how
lost
you-
3, but gained 2.
Right.
So-
We're still behind, but you won't have to rent as long, right?
And the same with the buses, for your information, we've actually lost a few years in the fleet replacement because this year we're actually able to secure one with a wheelchair lift, but the past couple of years because of COVID and supply chain, we haven't been able to replace it. So it's just sort of been floating along. We're now a few years behind of our typical 15 years. We like to go about 15 years and get them replaced. We're well behind on that. For sure.
Yeah, it's been several years since we've been able to get a bus, physically
Two.
get a bus.
So this chart's saying in 20, like the current school year, we have 6
Mhm.
buses that are between 16 and 22 years old.
Correct.
The vans are usually.
Still going strong with that.
We are, thankfully for good mechanics and well keep, the difference is that, you know, school funding mechanism gives us as a school entity, 0 to 15 is one price. When you are actually contracted out, you get a different rate for 0 to 5 years old, 5 to 10 years, and so on. So as a school owned entity, we only get one funding mechanism, 0 to 15. So that's why we try to do that 15-year rotation. Usually that gets us around 200-ish thousand miles on the bus. So it's a good number anyway. That's usually why we try to trigger that number. And that works out with our fleet number as well.
So we haven't been able to get buses for a bit, but we were anticipating this amount for 2 buses in a van every year. There's money kind of there for these.
Yep, so one of your reserve categories is for buses, not for vans. So vans can't go in there, but buses can go in there. So the years that we had money reserved for buses and then we've been unable to get them, it does roll into a fund.
Okay.
The money that's been allocated for vans does not. It's not student transportation, it's actually school buses. But yes, that's there.
Okay.
That's why we were trying to get the vans in this current year. And luckily, like we said, we had a vendor who had 2 vans that we were able to purchase, and then as well as the handicapped accessible bus that we are purchasing. But yes, over the course of the year, when we see that pick up, I mean, even the bus I heard today from Art may not be here till May or June. And if that's not here, we will then again roll that money so that we can use it when it comes, because essentially it's got to be here before June 30th to be used out of this year's budget funds. That's essentially how it works.
So who? I mean, did anybody ever think about adding on a van component to that fund
You're not permitted.
by law or by,
You
like,
have to
'cause we made it like
you
that?
cannot.
You are not
Oh.
permitted. I, earlier in the year, went around with our auditors and I said, it's student transportation. He went, it says school buses. So I thought it was student transportation because we were trying to roll one of the vans and it's school buses.
Yeah,
Cause
it's
it's a
another one of those-
1969 school.
Yeah,
It's another one of those antiquated school laws that legislators should know about because a school bus and a van are treated the same on the DMV level with a dual 6-month inspection. They're required because they require student transportation. But however, in that funding mechanism, a van is not considered school transportation, only buses. So it's really bizarre. They're not talking to each other, but under the requirements of inspection services, every 6 months, a school transportation vehicle has to be inspected. So how is it on one hand, but not on the other? It's really bizarre.
And your van needs are clearly going up,
Immensely.
so it makes no sense.
They are, and the contract you talked about earlier that you'll see for the singletons, I mean, they might be down to vans or cars because you have like one student going to one place.
Right.
And it's sometimes advantageous to be able to have a car take them or a van take them.
We also have teachers that take them for various things as well. They, golf, it's not just us driving them. Sometimes there's teachers that take the van, sign them out and take a team or of students somewhere as well. So it's still student transportation.
And your vans, unless they're diesel, which some of ours are, but some of the minis are not diesel, so they're running high mileage in terms of what you would expect from a non-diesel traditional minivan. Like, they are outfitted like a school bus, but they are no different than your traditional minivan that you purchase in terms of mileage, what you could expect mileage.
The one minivan we lost had over 300,000 miles on it. So we got one for
Good
it.
job.
Yeah,
It's hard driving too.
Yeah. Yeah, it still runs, it's the transmission. Yeah.
Okay, so typically, our replacements have been historically been budgeted for 230,000, anticipating 2 buses and 1 van each year to replace. The estimated need for this 23-24 is 3 buses and 2 vans. Now buses are what have increased
Yeah.
a
another
lot.
fire
It was
bill.
like 95,000, now up to 120,000.
Yeah, about 7 years ago, we got a bus for about 90,000, and now the same equipped bus is 120. So it's gone up considerably. Vans, we used to budget around 35,000 and now they're only 50.
Right.
So it's just gone up, and that's state contracting, that's the prices we can find. It's just it's out of control. The cost.
That's part of the reason why we had to mix and match the buses, because the vans came in so high at 50 to 51 they came in. Now, you don't have enough money in the budget for what you ordinarily had because they were higher than you originally budgeted.
So our recommendation is to use your current budget funds and increase the budget through use of fund balance to cover those additional funding needs for those replacements. Budgetary reserve. Budgetary reserve is used for our unexpected expenditures that occur throughout the year. We believe it's appropriate to use the fund balance as the funding stream to cover the unexpected expenditures. Currently, just like in past years, we have 400,000 allotted in the $400,000 allotted in the budgetary reserve category. So all our uncertainties still with budget is our local revenues. So we will get up to the last minute updates from the county every month of what our new assessed value is. So that budget amount for current real estate taxes will continue to hopefully increase because assessed values are going up within the district. State revenues, Governor Shapiro will be presenting the Commonwealth budget. Jim and I are going to be attending that on March 21st, the webcast for that. Hopefully, there will be some numbers of what he's, leaning towards for basic ed and everything else. Our fuel is still going on. That'll be the end of April. Electricity, we got numbers in the 21st of February. They came in better than what they expected. They were anticipating at least a 7-cent per kilowatt price. Currently, we're at 3 cents. They were expecting hopefully a 7-cent kilowatt price. They came in at 5 cents. So they're happy with that.
So we're at 3, you said?
Yes,
So just a 40% increase. That's what happened.
yeah, right, yeah. Well, it's better than 50, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Wait,
they
is that
were
the
very
same?
happy.
Is that the same for med ed and PPNL?
67%.
Yeah, so PPNL was 0.05179 per kilowatt and med ed account was 0.05476. So very close. Insurance pricing, we have preliminary numbers of our appraisals that came in with a 15.4% increase. They're going through and reappraising everyone's properties. And everyone is seeing an increase. Rec Commission saw huge increases with their appraisals. He's budgeted for me the current trends, so they will be looking at final numbers to give to me in April for insurance.
What kind of insurance?
Our property insurance, our auto insurance.
Overall 15%.
The appraisals went up 15.4% in the building values. So that will increase our premiums because of the increased value of all the property.
When was the last time we went out, put that out for bid?
Well, they are going out and getting
Quotes.
more
okay.
quotes. Yeah, yeah, we're at that 3 to 5 year period where you go out and you go look at new insurance companies. And Rob is doing that. I actually got the applications today to fill out for the other companies.
Yeah, so we're satisfied with the broker. It's just the-
Yeah, we're satisfied with the program. It's just, he's gonna go out and see what else is out
So he's
there.
still at least pricing it.
Yes, correct. Yes, he is. And as always, the updates to students and the enrollment as the school year goes on and updates in our staffing.
Typically, May, we bring you updates and all our process and stuffing.
Okay. So we have upcoming steps. So the next 2 months, 3 months, we'll be finalizing staff plans and make necessary adjustments. On the May 3rd workshop will be the presentation of the proposed final budget. On May 10th, it'll be for the adoption of the proposed final budget. The 7th workshop will be final budget, and the 21st of June will be the final adoption of our budget.
All right. I apologize for this, but could we go back to the third slide?
Yeah.
I was just slowly getting oriented to your presentation here. Where you have the budget summary,
Mhm.
that one, yeah. So if you look across to the columns, which is March 2024, 23, 24, that's where we are today,
Correct.
right? So from our early look,
Mhm.
we increased the budget for building and departments,
Correct.
a couple $100,000.
Right.
So something happened.
Well, if you
It
remember,
was-
we were trying to take it down and.
Correct.
So if you look at what our final budget was and what our March look was, I took most of the buildings and departments down in some areas. But in a lot of the areas, due to all of the increased costs, we're not able to do that. So if you look, their final budget was a little over 3 million and now we're 3.1. So it's almost deceiving. I tried to take, as you mentioned, some of the building budgets down.
Okay.
Unsuccessfully.
And what's the date? I should know this. What's the date where we know who's gonna retire?
We do know that already. You took
So
action
does
on
that
3.
number reflect?
Yes.
Yes, the only staffing updates are class sizes and those things. The retirements that have notified us thus far are already taken. That's where some of the salary and benefit changes that Christie talked about showing up.
Okay, so that is, okay.
They
Those
are,
are retires, you know, with hiring back in.
yes. Now, someone could retire that didn't give us notice or resign that didn't give us notice after that date. That's still possible. But their retirement for the contract was February 1st.
Okay. And then revenues, it looks like we're gonna be better than what we could at the first look.
Correct. Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Mhm.
Sorry I wasn't
Yeah.
with you there. Well, it's a good trend anyway.
Yeah, a few more months and we'll be in the black.
There is some.
5 more rounds,
Yeah.
5 more rounds, that's
Still-
success.
Yes, that's what we're expecting.
Tried on building budgets. I was very not successful.
Well, and when buses come in, yeah. No, they're coming in.
Do you have any additional questions budget wise? We can get you the millage information you asked about earlier. Did the bond question for 2007, did that answer your question about the Emmaus bond goal? These are pretty much the budgeting strategies we've used before, and so when you talk about the fund balance categories, this is what they're for. All of the things you talked about are balances that we will draw from fund balance to be able to help balance the budget or work with unanticipated expenses that we're not really sure what they're going to be. And so all of those strategies have worked very successfully for this board over time in planning and pre-planning what it is that you will do with the money to be able to levelize the increases to taxpayers. Is there anything else that you would like to see?
Have you assumed any, I guess, from a year-over-year standpoint, as far as revenues from transfers of warehouses or new warehouses, or I can't even keep up with the current
Yeah.
debates that are going on in the
So,
community?
I just had a meeting last week, with the TIF board.
Yeah.
And, Brian Carl had mentioned that, building H is on, it's half built, so we should be seeing some transfer tax from that, exception bills. As far as anything else, not really. I mean, our transfer tax right now is extremely low what we're getting. Even delinquent collections from Portnoy are trending lower than they have been.
Is that building H in the TIF?
Yes.
So we'll get 50%.
Yes.
There's one in, one out.
And that 50% runs out when all the others run out?
Yes.
Yep, same time frame. If your question was, if we plan for anything in Low Hill Township, no.
No.
Right. Right. Thank you. 1.02, 23-24 CLIU budget. So that's what we had presented earlier, right?
Yep, so this will move to the board meeting in 2 weeks for approval. They do need your approval, and there is a resolution that you will have to fill out that has, how many of you voted yes and no for that budget. That needs to be submitted back to them. I think they're all the same or similar.
Let's see, next item, 5.03, CLIU student driver education program agreement.
Right, so every year this comes to us, it's a benefit for our students to have driver's ed and hope the parents not pull their hair out. It is a cost to the parents, students of the district. It's no cost to us, just an agreement we approve every year. They are we have 33 students who participated thus far in the 22-23 school year, 29 prior to that. So it is a well-received program for everyone. So we'll be looking for approval on the 15th to sign the agreement to continue that benefit for our students and families in the district.
With those students are mine.
It is a good program, yeah, for those that
It's a
are-
good program, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
They've done insurance too.
Save on insurance, that hassle of the testing, like the whole line. It's a really good program. And we actually have members of our own staff that are working into it. I know Miss Mangles now started to work on it. We had one of our old coaches, Mr. Rodota, was also, and that's who had my two sons. Very good program. Can't speak it up.
Yeah, they have a lot of patience.
Yeah.
And thank you. Next item, 5.04, Concord Theatricals, TAMS, Whitmark Music Library Agreement. It's a mouthful.
Yes. So this is the contract for the musical that the middle school was going to put on in production this spring, The Wizard of Oz, the youth edition. I'm asking for this be okay to sign this agreement so that they can order their materials. And then it'll be brought back for retroactive approval for the March 15th board meeting.
Anybody have any issues with that? Okay. It's like good to go. That takes us to the next item, 5.05, reports.
As you saw on the monthly recap, there were no local revenues coming in just for the simple fact that we close out December 31st and everything is then moved over to delinquent, so there is no collections in January, because basically everything's moved over to collections. Now, February 1st, we did issue some exception bills slowly being paid. So there's not going to be much local revenue coming in. State revenues, we had our special ed, our rental sinking fund. That is for our Plan Con that we get reimbursement for from borrowings from past school years. We received our PSERS contribution in federal programs, all of our grants, we had payments made. EIT collections, we are still trending upward than the year before. We're up about 6.3%. And the expenditures for the month of January, relatively around the same. You will see in the property, the other replacement capital of 104, and that was for 2 vans. There's any other questions on the reports?
So the lowest student activity report, FD 80.
They're basically all your they are all your high school student activities.
And I know you said the yearbook one had a lot in it because it was money coming in, coming out. Some of the other ones seem to have a lot, like science club and student council. Are they money coming in, coming out?
Student council, you have to remember, student council does a lot for everyone in the high school. Student council is also where when like class of 2000, they have a year to spend their money. So they have a balance of $2,000 or $1,200. So at the end of this school year, if they haven't spent that money, that goes into student council, because student council represents the whole population of the high school, and they do a lot of things for everyone in the high school. That's where it's designated that when classes don't spend their money, it goes in there.
I recall that now, sorry.
No, that's fine. Science club, they have a larger balance right now. They're doing a lot of their competitions, so that'll be going down.
That's okay.
Any more questions or comments?
Under state revenues, that rate sinking fund, is that Plan Con?
Yes,
Are we still getting money from Plan Con?
we are. So everything that was established from years ago, they didn't put a moratorium on that.
So that's still coming in?
That's still coming in, yeah. So once I have a bond payment, that anything that was in with Plan Con, I then submit it to the state and then we get our reimbursement.
It was a moratorium on any new projects because they weren't willing to add any more money.
Although there is talk to bring it back.
There is shock.
When we were at that meeting last week.
Sure.
Okay, thank you. We'll take action in 2 weeks. 5.06, financial information updates. And we have a couple items on there.
We do. So this time of the year is typically when we ask if you want us to go out to bid trash, or I contacted our vendor that we have right now, Republic. If they would hold their prices, or what does it look like for the 23-24 school year? I was in contact with them. Art has a good relationship.
We've worked out the bumps.
We worked out the
Yes.
bumps, yeah. I mean, if you remember, last year when we asked for pricing, Waste Management wouldn't even give us a price. Because they just didn't have the manpower to continue collecting our garbage. Yeah, it is crazy. Republic did come back. She said, unfortunately, they can't hold the contract price of the 10 months. They would be looking for a 4% increase.
And what does that come out to?
It comes out to. So our 10-month contract is a little over 30. Hold on, let me pull it up. I thought I had it up. I don't know. So a 4% increase would be like under $1,000.
What's the total price?
So for 10 months, so our contract is in the summer, we pay per pool. Whenever the guys call for a pickup, we pay per pool. In the 10-month school year, so September to June, we pay a flat fee. So that contract was $20,939.70.
Did Berger ever come in with the
No.
cost?
Mm,
They weren't even interested.
mm,
When we put it out the last time they didn't.
No.
Submit it.
That's trash and recycling though, right?
No, recycling is frugal.
Yeah. Cool.
Just trash. Recycling is frugal.
Did we make a change at Weisenberg with? I feel like something changed in
The trash?
Yeah,
Just moved it up.
Moved it.
Yeah.
Okay. Used
So
to be
took
the
away
front.
from the front, put them in the back.
Got it, yeah. Looks better.
Yes. They don't
Yeah, I'm
belong.
not sure whose design that was.
I know.
The
That was a pretty
trash dumpster
bad
all over
design.
What made it worse is that the gate was always open. If that was all reversed, then it would probably be less accessible.
We appreciate that.
Yes.
No problem.
Job.
All right, so you're looking to recommending that that's the best rate and we stay with Republic at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, they still have shortages of drivers and,
Yeah, they
It's not
contract,
getting
a
any
lot of
better.
times you'll see, different companies coming in and picking them up, but that's internal with them. We still
Right.
get it from the public, so it doesn't matter. to us.
So they're even outsourcing
yeah.
They are.
Mhm,
or subcontracting.
mhm.
Okay, thank you. And the next item then, King's Pride, is that,
Yeah, so King Spry's contract is up come June 30th of 23. They do have in their contract that they would do an extension of 2 years. The extension would keep intact their monthly fee of 23,000. I did reach out to Jess. I did not hear back from her for what the new rates would be for if we call them, like the attorney fee right now is $160 an hour. So I haven't gotten that information back from them, but they will hold the annual fee on a freeze for those 2 extended years.
and the annual fee is 23,
Yes,
not a monthly.
no,
Right, right. She
Yeah.
didn't say monthly.
no, it's 20.
Okay, I was gonna ask.
It's 23,000, so it's $2,300 a month
Plus then. any
that they
addition-
give us over the school year, the 10 months.
It's anything that's included in the
Yes.
retainer, so
Yes.
anything associated with
Sorry.
specific litigation.
Sorry to give you a heart attack.
Maybe we don't get them both here. We'll take the younger one, she's probably cheaper rate.
Same.
All right.
And typically, I took a snapshot of 1920 through 2021, and we typically run about 500 hours that we need attorneys outside of the annual fee.
Okay.
Yeah, as long as it is not a contract yet, which none of those were.
King's Pride wouldn't-
Yeah.
Oh, you would have
yeah,
the other one.
King's Pride wouldn't be involved in that.
Okay. Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, that takes us to old business. Do you have any old business tonight from anybody? All right, new business, any new business? All right, communications, John, that stuff for us? Okay. All right, I guess that takes us to adjournment, so looking for a motion. Oh. Hey, that's not me. It's not there, right?
Yes.
Wait, what am I? Communication, oh, courtesy of Florida. I can't read. There's no one here. Sorry. Adjournment. Any promotion?
Motion.
Mr. Weiser,
Second.
second, Ms. Stalker. All right. Meeting adjourned.
Slightly after half